you go to sit down on the toilet or the dinner table chair, don't sit down, squat, and then squat back up. You know what I mean? And I've been telling people this for the last year or so of just, those movement patterns that you do day in and day out mean way more to your overall longevity than the movement patterns that you have in the gym. And they'll affect each other too. So if you move like crap for 23 hours out of the day, and then you move really well for 1 hour of the day, well, which one's going to make the most lasting impact?
Getting in shape can be scary. So many questions, so many things to learn. But that's where we come in. The Fitness Fundamental Podcast. The only podcast here to take the fear out of fitness. With your host, Dom Jackson.
What's up, fitness freaks? This is Dom Jackson. You're tuning into the Fitness Fundamentals Podcast. The only podcast here to take the fear out of fitness. Now, I have a special guest with me today, Mr. Dan Burde, the creator of the Iron Crew, and all the way from warm and sunny California. Dan, how you feeling today, man?
Pretty good, man. I appreciate that intro. Dude, I love your voice.
Thank you. I was told for a while to do radio, and I figured, a podcast fit in just with it.
Oh, I could hear it.
But how you feeling today, though, Dan? How's it going?
It's going well, man. It's exactly like you said out here in sunny California. I live in Northern California, so the weather is a little bit more unpredictable than like LA or San Diego.
Gotcha.
But nonetheless, man, it's probably going to be about high 60s, low 70s, and sunny.
Well, it's cold, wet, and rainy in Jersey right now, so that sounds pretty good to me. Now, Dan, I want to hear some more about your backstory as far as your fitness background and what you do now as far as fitness wise. So, if you want to give me your intro story, wherever that begins.
Yeah, it begins probably when I was on the high school football team when I was about 14. I played like Pop Warner or whatever you guys call it out there. We call it Pop Warner.
Mm-hmm.
In junior high, and I was, real lean and skinny, and I was still real lean and skinny going into high school, and I quickly realized I needed to gain weight for the football team. So after getting mopped on the field left and right my freshman year, I reached out to one of my older brother's best friends named Sal DiStefano. Have you ever heard of Sal DiStefano, Mind Pump?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, so there's a podcast called Mind Pump, and the host is Sal DiStefano.
Okay.
You got to check him out.
Mind
Very
Pump,
entertaining,
right.
Good quality stuff. Anyway, he was working at like a 24-hour fitness, and he was a personal trainer. And my brother said, you should just go ask Sal like what you should do to gain weight. So I hit him up, and he taught me the basics, like back squat, deadlift, and bench press. That's it. So I did that like 3 times a week, all throughout the summer, and saw the instant results. So the next year, I did a lot better in football and just kind of fell in love with the physical training aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Went on to play Division I football at San Jose State University back in early 2000.
Nice.
And realized about halfway through, a couple of things happened, but one, I was really slow. So, competing with guys like at a national level like that, coming from all over the country. These dudes are freak athletes, man, like running 4.40s and benching 500 pounds, and that just wasn't me. But what I did realize too is that with that taper off in talent on the field from my end was the sheer love of training for football more so than I actually loved playing football. So is it the chicken or the egg? I'm not sure. Was it because I sucked on the field at that point and so I just loved the training, or was it because I loved the training and I didn't really care on the field? But nonetheless, I continued training, stopped playing football, and just had this longing for exercise. And so I continued the functional fitness thing, found CrossFit back in 2006. And have always, pretty much since 2006, have been using CrossFit as my primary source of fitness. And currently I coach and work full-time at a CrossFit gym out here in California, Northern California, called NC Fit. So if anybody listening is in the CrossFit space, they'll probably recognize the name Jason Khalipa. Have you heard that name?
Yes.
So Jason Khalipa is the owner of the gym that I work for.
Okay.
So it's I'm in good company, learning from the best, learning from a lot of other good coaches, and just having a great time.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, how did you get into now as far as your day-to-day training? Like, what's that like being a CrossFit coach? What's your day-to-day like of teaching and motion and? Well, you probably know better than I can explain it.
So, God, my day-to-day is like I wake up. Today is my off day. Today's Monday, so I'm off on Mondays. I work Tuesday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Okay.
So, Dom, I wake up at 3:40 every day to get ready, have my coffee, get up to work, prep for the first class. And then I'm pretty much coaching anywhere from 5 to 7 classes between 5 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
So, a lot of people think like, oh, you work at a gym, you must be working out all the time. Or, oh, you're a coach. You must be fucking. And it's like, no, dude, like, if you're like, look at the NFL football coaches, dude, those dudes, I mean, a lot of them are in shape nowadays, but like, not all of them. Like, Bill Belichick is not in the greatest shape, right?
Yeah, not even close.
So just because you're surrounded by it or you're coaching other people and stuff doesn't necessarily mean that you're working out.
Exactly.
But no, some time to work out. I usually try to keep it a little bit more cardio and like circuit training style.
Mm-hmm.
I joke with people that I work with because I'm like on the older end of people that I work with. I'm 36, so I'm not. I still lift heavy every now and again with good form, but I focus most of my time on like circuit training, getting the heart rate up, staying lean, staying mobile, and just staying injury free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that. There's some of the things you said that I'm shaking my head like yes, 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 yes. Because I had to get up at 4 this morning to start training, so I know exactly what you mean. To getting up before everyone else in the world, and people think you work out all the time. I know. You're preaching, brother. You're preaching.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, right? Like somebody said that the other day. They were like, "Oh, it's my daughter, man." So I have 2 kids. I have a 10 and an 8-year-old, and I get off of work. I go pick her up, and she goes, "Where are we going?" I'm like, "We're gonna go to the gym because I need to work out. I need to go get like my energy out, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "Don't you work at a gym? Like, why do you have to go to the gym? Like, you work at a gym." And so I said, something like, "Well, think of it this way, like a therapist, right? Like a psychologist. They might see 8 clients a day and see them for an entire hour. They might be in the psychiatry or the psychology office all day, and they're helping people process through their problems. They might need to go see somebody after that. Just because they are the psychologist doesn't mean that they don't need to see a psychologist. They need that for themselves. Same thing with a trainer. Just because the trainer works in the gym all day doesn't mean that all they're doing is working out."
Yeah. Dude, I know exactly where you're coming from on that. Now, you also were saying you're really big into mobility now. Let me hear some of your thoughts on that.
So like when I was playing football in the weight room, and I love the weight room in playing football with back squats and power cleans and bench press. Those were like the 3 that we did the most often. And although there was some general technique work, like, hey, this is what it looks like, this is how the movement goes, and this is how it should look. There was never any like fine tuning. I felt like there was never really any fine tuning of the movement. Mm-hmm. So it's like, although we knew like, yeah, we got to keep our back flat on the back squat, and yeah, we have to get our hips below our knees, and yeah, you got to flex your upper back to make sure it's stable. There was never really any like real fine tuning of the movement, like what I do on a daily basis for some of the advanced athletes, like somebody who has all those things. You kind of like, okay, now you got the basics. Now let's tweak it even more to make it as perfect as we can get it. There never really was any of that when I was playing football. It was more like just put more weight on the bar and press harder, or like put more weight on the bar and pull harder and stomp your feet on the power cleans. Mm-hmm. It was really no dialing in the technique. And I think because of that, I was trying to get stronger, trying to get bigger, trying to get faster, and trying to prove myself. I all that technique stuff just kind of went out the door, and I focused most of my energy and time on intensity, and not much time on stretching, not much time on proper mechanics. And now I'm starting, about 5 years ago, I started to pay for it a little bit, where like my shoulder was acting up for no reason. My low back was acting up for apparently no reason. And now recently, like I've just started to realize like my ankles are real stiff, and all these things that I've neglected in the past are really starting to come and bite me in the butt. So when I think about mobility, I think it starts at a young age. It starts when you just start moving, like tracking your knees over your toes, avoiding the valgus knee that blew out RG3's knee. I don't know if you remember that, but
mm-hmm.
Right. Like, so that's a whole other topic, but like little things like that, like my son, he tends to have that knee that caves in when he lands off of a jump. And I'm constantly telling them, man, like drive your knees out. You know, your knees should be right over your toes because that's slowly wearing on your medial ligaments, and you're gonna, you know what I mean. So that's all things that you and I both know. But I think when I think of mobility, I think it starts at a very young age, and I think that we need to focus on technique and form before the intensity. And I know I feel like I'm going on a tangent here, Dom, but
It's all connected, brother. Danny, I
sure.
got you on that one.
Yeah, so so once at a young age we dial that in, I think that it sets those youngsters up for so much more success and longevity in whatever they're doing, whether it's a sport that they're trying to play, whether they are just trying to be, a good active person, whether you're trying to be a good parent, a good grandparent to your kids, a good partner, whatever it may be. Just trying to prevent the onset of that chronic pain that comes from just poor movement patterns.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, my man, but I feel like I just kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, but I definitely understand what you're saying. I'm sure they did too. That movement really does affect everything, and it starts from when you're young. So, and the thing about movement-based problems is that they compound. So, like, the way you walk every day, the way you land every time you play, if you're an athlete or, just a civilian going through life, your movement patterns affect how you're going to feel through everything that you do. So I definitely understood that. Hopefully that's explained it for anybody who didn't. Now,
yeah, and you hit on a really good point that I had a conversation with somebody the other day is, you probably see this as a trainer where you're like, let's just say you're teaching somebody a deadlift, right?
mm-hmm.
And you're telling them to just just a basic, keep your back flat. You don't want your back to round when you're lifting anything relatively heavy. And so then they do their deadlifts and you've dialed them in a little bit and their form looks good. And then they reach their very last rep and they go to drop the bar or place the barbell down. And what do? They round their back to place it on the ground. I know, and I know that, like, for trainers listening, that's probably a huge obvious one, and it's something that happens all the time. But I always ask them, I always tell them, like, well, what was the difference between putting the bar down and you lifting the bar and putting it back down when you were doing your repetitions? And they kind of have this aha moment, like, no, there is no difference. And so I always follow that up, that observation or that coaching cue up with, look at the way that you operate in your day-to-day life. When you are at home and you drop a pencil and you go to pick up the pencil, don't think of it as picking up the pencil. Think of it as deadlifting the pencil off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And they always laugh, right? They always laugh because it sounds so silly. But it's true, man. Set your feet. Keep your knees over your toes. Keep your back flat. When you go to sit down on the toilet or the dinner table chair, don't sit down, squat, and then squat back up. You know what I mean? And I've been telling people this for the last year or so of just, those movement patterns that you do day in and day out mean way more to your overall longevity than the movement patterns that you have in the gym. And they'll affect each other too. So if you move like crap for 23 hours out of the day, and then you move really well for 1 hour of the day, well, which one's going to make the most lasting impact?
Exactly. Practicing what you preach. And that is true. The things that happen outside the gym definitely affect you so much more than things in the gym. Even the way you get in and out of your car, like it really is all correlated. And you can I know people have definitely thrown their back out or hurt themselves just doing regular things around the house, moving the sofa, picking up that pencil. I've definitely seen people hurt themselves from picking up a pencil too. So I definitely, we're just vibing again on this same idea that, movement is key to everything else that you're going to feel throughout life. So
yeah, absolutely.
With your clients, what are some things you have them do pre-training session to get them ready for certain activities or certain exercises, I guess?
Yeah, I think that kind of falls into two categories. Somebody who's maybe a little bit more higher level or advanced, maybe somebody who's a little bit younger who hasn't quite lost mobility, hasn't quite lost flexibility and stability in positions. That person, their movement or their warm up might look a lot different than somebody who's had some injuries and needs to open up their hips a little bit to get into better positions. So the person who's already a great mover, their biggest focus is priming their muscles, and they're priming their joints and priming their body and central nervous system for whatever effort that you're about to put them under. So, that could be banded resistance stuff. That can be like some plyometric drills, some light plyometric drills to get the feet and the calves warmed up. That can be kind of like a mini quote unquote workout, depending on like if it's a circuit training thing. You don't want to go from 0 to 100. Mm-hmm. So you would just kind of slowly ramp them up, and not necessarily focus so much on flexibility and like static stretching, because for that person, they don't necessarily need it, and their time is best used for priming their engine for whatever workout you're about to put them through. But that's a very small population in my space, at least. The majority of people, an overwhelming like 90-95%, are going to fall into the category of they sit behind a desk all day, they sit in a car all day, they're standing, like whatever it is where their work is, they're just standing a lot. So in those cases, those people, most of the time they have really tight ankles and calves, really stiff hips and low back, or really tight shoulders, or all of the above. And so for them, like let's just say we're doing a squat session, and I got somebody who's got really tight ankles. I'm going to spend some time opening up their ankles, even if it's a static position, even if it's even if we're not necessarily moving, we're not maximizing our calorie burning or anything like that. But the reason we're doing that for that person is because if we don't do that, then they're going to put themselves in a position that they might get hurt because they're not able to properly get into a position. So although we're taking a step back when it comes to the movement part, we're taking 2 steps forward so that they can actually get into a better position before they hit something intense. So that's primarily what we do in the very beginning stages of our exercise is we try to put people in better positions to allow them to get there and prevent injury and stay safe.
Safety is definitely the key.
Yeah, because if you're injured, man, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced it. I mean, if you get injured, that puts you on the shelf for however long.
Oof.
You have to modify around that. And now what you may have lost in that 5 to 10 minutes of a mobility session, you have now gained in the amount of days you're able to train in a certain period of months or years. I always tell this to people, like, hey, I want you to be able to deadlift in 30 years, not just in 30 days, like, so what you're doing now, if you don't have good form or good movement patterns, it's going to affect you, and you're not going to be able to do this in 30 years. I want to see you in 30 years.
Wow. That's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just like with my kids, if I tell my kids to do something, I'm not trying to compare adults to kids, but I use the same.
Sometimes I think that works pretty well as being a trainer. I can definitely say there's some kids out there.
Yeah, they're like their mind is like a child when it comes to what they're doing, because they just don't know, right? They don't know what they don't know, so you have to teach them. But where I was going with that is anytime I tell my kids to do something and they don't like doing it, if I can find a reason that I'm telling them not to do it because it's a safety concern, there's always a huge light bulb that goes on for them. Like, oh, okay, Dad's just not being an asshole. He's actually trying to help me and care for me because he doesn't want me to get hurt. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this podcast.
Oh, you can. Don't worry.
It's the same thing with clients. They're just like, oh, okay, Coach Danny isn't just trying to have me do it his way because he's stubborn and he has control issues. It's because he's genuinely looking out for my safety and he's concerned about my safety.
Yeah. We do it. We really do have what's best at mind for each person. Sometimes you gotta bash some heads in, but it is about like what's best for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely the other side of that coin where you have to, push people who are prepared over their comfort zone and get them out of their comfort zone. And, that takes time. I'm sure you've seen that. Like, it takes a little bit of time, but once you've gained their trust, they'll learn that, it's a great, for any trainer that's listening, I think it's a great psychological tool. I have a psychology background and a kinesiology background. I double majored that in college. So I really gravitate towards the psychology of life in general, but just using this for future for all you was for any trainers out there listening, it's going to be it'll be a huge psychological tool to keep in your back pocket for the case that you want to push your client past where their comfort zone is, when you've already told them to dial it back a little bit. So if you already start your relationship off with, hey Johnny, or hey Susie, you should probably take 10 pounds off the bar because I'm concerned about you and I want you to stay safe and I want you to be doing this in 30 years, not just 30 days. And then, flash forward however long, you say, hey, look, you need to suck it up and you need to go faster. You need to put 15 more pounds on the bar. They're going to be much more likely to listen to that because they've already heard you tell them to dial it back a little bit. So I love using that as the foundation of, look, I'm just here to keep you safe. I'm here to keep you doing this forever and longevity, so that when you do need them to go faster, you have some leverage there.
That's a great philosophy to have. Wow.
Yeah. So what kind of a typical like clients are you working with? Is it like, I saw a bunch of like your kettlebell stuff and a lot of like unilateral like side lunges and whatnot in your latest Instagram posts?
Most of my clients are the general population. So people that are coming in, most of my people are people that haven't been working out just yet. It's like I'm like the first time they ever had any kind of athletic experience. So I'm really big on making sure, squat right, core right, push right, pull right, lunge right. So like basic movement patterns over and over.
Right.
Making sure that, like I said, like the fundamentals. So, making sure you know how to feel this. Can you engage this muscle? Can you move this way? Can you step in a unilateral movement? Can you do a reverse lunge? And kind of just taking it up from there. But a lot of times people come in and they don't even know, like they didn't even know they could do what they did, and they didn't know that they weren't doing something that they didn't know they didn't know, like you said earlier.
Right. They just lack that self-awareness or body awareness.
Yes, body awareness. I think it's a lot of body awareness teaching. It's like my first like 2 to 3 months, just like.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love it, man. I love like the angle that you play with the fundamentals. And the title of this podcast is that like us fitness people, we kind of take that for granted sometimes, that like because we've been around it forever, that we just assume everybody else knows it, when that's just absolutely not the case. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a community or a circle or a space that I'm just totally unfamiliar with, where they're very familiar with it, and they might assume that I know, and I'm just clueless, right? So it's the same thing with fitness. Like, we can't all assume that everybody knows the basics, because they might not come from an athletic background. They might just come from a science background or a music background or something.
Definitely. Now, as far as for the listeners, if you had to give like some things to check for, let's say before a back squat, what were some of the like the patterns that you see that people typically have when doing a back squat that someone could try to look out for if they don't have a coach just yet? What were some of the spots it could be? Is it more knee, more hip, more core based? What were some of the issues that you think typically come out?
I think the that valgus knee that I mentioned earlier, where people's knees cave in a little bit, and that could be a combination of overall poor movement pattern throughout however many years they've been alive. God bless our comfortable desk chairs and our comfortable car chairs, but they don't do anything for our glute activation. They don't do anything for our abductors on the inside of our thigh, our groin muscles. They just really foster being lazy when we're sitting. And so when we're lazy when we're sitting, especially if like a chair, just imagine the chair that you sit at your desk or the chair that you sit at in your car is like, it's kind of got this crown to it, right? Where on the outsides, it's kind of like this little crater. And so what happens is that just kind of relaxes your body, and which is cool. It feels relaxing, but then your knees cave in, and then your groin muscles get really tight, and you're just totally relaxed. So then you ask somebody to squat down without any support, and what do? They go back into exactly what how they've been relaxing in their desk chair.
Mm-hmm.
And so then their knees come in. And so if I were going to say the number one thing, it's going to be your knee position. You're going to want your knee to be over your toes. So if you squat down and you notice that your knees are caving in, or even on the flip side, excessive outward knees past your foot, that's going to be a sign of just putting your knee in a poor placement. Your knee wants to stay straight ahead. And so, especially when you're placing a heavy load on your back or on a barbell, you're going to want that knee to be in a nice neutral position right over your toes. And when I say over your toes, I mean like in line with them. So if you're looking down at your knee, you should look past your knee and see your toes or your foot. That would probably be number one. And then the other one would just be an overall poor hip flexibility. So like not being able to squat low enough and losing that range of motion over the course of years. And that comes from our nice, comfortable recliner chairs, right? So like ever really have a reason to squat below parallel, because all of our chairs are either at parallel or above parallel. So, I mean, if you look at third world countries, we talk about all the time, like third world countries, like in Asia, India, Africa, other third world countries where it's like they don't really have access to these comfortable chairs. Their comfortable chair is the bottom of their squat. So,
Wow.
and it's awesome. Like, it's awesome to see. And there's a picture posted on like Facebook the other day. I'm sure plenty of people have seen it, but it's this picture of this park somewhere in Asia, and I don't know where it is, but it's a huge park, like Central Park in New York, and there's benches everywhere, and there's hundreds of people at this park, and not one of them are sitting on the bench. They're all in the bottom of a squat. And when you talk to people who do that and they feel like it's comfortable, they literally will say, yeah, I'm resting right now. Whereas like a lot of the clients that you see, I'm sure, and a lot of the clients that I see, getting into the bottom of a squat, like getting them to go at or below parallel takes some effort. Like you have to stretch them out in order to get there, right?
Oh, definitely.
So if I were to make this number two observation, it would be that one, just for your squat. And then the third one would be just upper back awareness and upper back mobility, just upper thoracic spine, because again, it's just that sitting position, or even like that forward hunch with driving or on your phone or on your computer. Our shoulders round forward, and so our upper back has lost this ability to kind of retract the shoulder blades and stay in this upright posture. So those would probably be the three things, and those are all fixable through position work and some mobility and some foam rolling and myofascial release and whatnot. So yeah, man, I think like ankles are a big one. Ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, all those are real big. I mean, that's why the back squat is the king of all exercises, right? Because it's a full body movement. If one piece of if one link of the chain is missing or weak, the whole thing's going to fall apart.
It really is. It really is one of the best ones, if not the best. Based on everything you said, there's so many factors that go into it that just compounds it all together. Now, Danny, your podcast, the Iron Crew podcast, I wanted to hear some more about that. What's that about?
Oh, dude, it's so I started so Iron Crew Athletics started because of my 5 a.m. crew that I coach every morning. So earlier on this year, the backstory is earlier on this year, my gym only offered 3 5 a.m. classes a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And when I asked my boss at the time, I said, why don't we have it every day? I mean, if we're going to offer a 5 a.m. class, we need everybody to kind of identify with that class and know that it's available every day for it to grow, or else it's just not going to grow. And so he goes, well, I've never really had anybody who's willing to coach it every day. So I'm like, well, dude, that's me, bro. Like, I'm going to do this. So let's make it every day. I'll be here every day. So it started off with a small group. And in order to promote the class, I wanted to like make them feel cool. You know what I mean? Like I wanted them to have like a slogan or maybe some sort of identity that gave them like this like sense of purpose for 5 a.m.
Yes.
So I was like, we gotta create like a nickname. Like what's our 5 a.m. crew nickname? So we tossed around some ideas, and finally one of the guys was like, we're the 5 a.m. Iron Crew. Where iron sharpens iron. And I was like, that's freaking dope, dude. I was like, we're going to make a t-shirt. I'm going to make a t-shirt, and all 5, because there was only like 3 or 5 of them at the time. I said, all 5 of you are going to have t-shirts, and we're going to pump this class up. It's going to be the biggest class of the day by the end of the year. So then it got me thinking like, well, maybe I can do like, because like I started also noticing, because in group settings, I know it's a little different than what you're doing, but in group settings, there's a lot of like side conversations, because you'll teach a general movement, and then you'll kind of branch off, and then everybody will kind of do their own thing under the guidance of me, and I'll make my way around the room and make sure everybody's form is good, and maybe drop a little knowledge here on somebody who needs it based on whatever their individual needs are. And when I was dropping like certain knowledge, I forget what it was, I was having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, and I noticed 2 other people were eavesdropping on the conversation. And I thought, well, crap, like they may have not heard the whole story. Like I want to like stop everybody and like tell everybody this, right? So then it got me thinking like maybe I should just start like some sort of a platform, like a blog, and I'll write out a blog like once a week on some sort of fitness health related topic. And anytime somebody has a question, I can just refer them to my website. And then so then I was like, well, what am I going to call it? And I was like, well, nobody knows who Danny Burde is. Like, nobody's going to go to dannyburde.com. So I was like, well, I just want to like create something that sounds cool. So I was like, Iron Crew, like 5 a.m. Iron Crew. So I was like, Iron Crew Athletics. That's dope. So I called it ironcrewathletics.com, started blogging, realized that like I wanted to provide content in just all platforms, like video and audio. And so I was like, well, I'll start a podcast called the Iron Crew Podcast. So there's that. And then there's also, I've got a YouTube channel that's really, really new, and it's kind of in the works, but I'm working on the YouTube channel. But it's all centered around the website. So you can go to the website. There's a blog tab. It's got little subcategories like mobility and exercise, nutrition. And then there's the podcast tab. You can actually listen to all of the podcast episodes on the website. You can also listen to that on you can also listen to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. And then lastly, there's a video tab on the website. And those are all essentially YouTube videos that I linked up. And there's anything from nutrition advice to coffee, how to make a good pour over coffee at home, to how to learn how to do certain pull-up maneuvers, all sorts of good stuff.
Mm. And how do they find you if they want to contact you?
I'm most active on social media on Instagram. So the Instagram handle is @IronCrewAthletics. If you DM me, I check that every day, so I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I've got Facebook, Iron Crew Athletics, Twitter @IronCrewAthlete. They only allowed me 15 characters on that one, so
I know that.
Cut out the athletics. So it's Iron Crew Athlete on Twitter. And then the last one that I like to plug, dude, is my LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn, Don?
I am. We need to add each other on that as well.
Dude, absolutely, man. If for anybody who is in the fitness space and is trying to promote themselves or their brand, highly recommend to get on LinkedIn and start posting there and start interacting with people there, because there's tons of people on LinkedIn that are very, very interested in fitness. And that's just my name. That's just Danny Burde, DANNY, and BURDE is my last name.
Awesome. Now, we also have this thing we do. It's called the question of the day. You get to ask the listeners a question. Any question you want that you want to find the answer to.
Oh gosh, my questions of the day are not very profound, quite honestly. They're kind of designed to be goofy. They're designed to be icebreaker questions. They're designed to get people, because I work in a space where it's a group setting, mm-hmm. and it's also a very community oriented setting. So there's a lot of people that know each other and have developed friendships and relationships, romantic relationships. That's how I met my girlfriend. There's like plenty of community going on in CrossFit gyms. But for somebody who maybe is a little bit more shy or a little less likely to reach out by themselves to somebody else to talk to them, I like to break the ice every day with some sort of question of the day. And it doesn't get too serious because I don't want it to be like a somber mood,
Mm-hmm.
So, gosh, are you asking for like a good one, like a good
No,
profound one?
I love everything you just said works perfectly. I would love for you to use one of your class ones right now.
All right, so
Break the ice.
this was my last one. It's at what point do you get rid of your socks, right? So like, is it as they're worn down, as they're starting to wear out and they're getting thin? Is it when you get one hole in them? Is it when you get a hole in the toe? Is it when you get a hole in the heel? Is it when you get a hole in the bottom of the foot? So that like, at what point do you get rid of your sock?
I love it. I love it, guys. All right.
What is it, Dom? I want to know your answer.
For me, it's oh man. See, a lot of times they don't even make it that long because I only wear black socks, so like they're smelling pretty bad because they're black socks and I train and work out, so they only last about like a month or two. So I
Oh
mean,
wow! So you go through socks like a lot.
yeah, that's why I usually buy them in bulk. That's a great question of the day though. Holy
Yeah,
smokes!
and it's there's definitely a drastic difference in answers based on gender, right? Like a lot of guys are like, yeah, 3 holes is my standard, or and then like girls are just like, man, once they start getting thin, I wear them out. And then it's ironically, Dom, like the guys who've been married for a long time, they're like, yeah, I don't have to worry about socks because my wife buys them for me.
Oh, that's the goal right there. Just not worry about buying them at all. That's funny.
Right, right.
But all right, Dan, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Um, question today, guys. How long? Wait, can you say it again? How long does it take you to fill out your socks?
Yeah. At what point do you get rid of your
At
socks?
what point do you get rid of your socks? Danny Birdie, much appreciated. Once again, it's the Fitness Fundamentals Podcast with Dom Jackson. And take care, guys.